How sweet the sound that saved the wreck like me. I was lost, and now I'm found. Was blind, and now I see. Too many dangers, toils and snares I have already come. Was grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been here 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun. We've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved the wreck like me. I once was lost, and now I'm found. Was blind, and now I see.
Here. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to try to read a poem. Elizabeth wrote in May. She introduced it by saying, "Something I'm working on as I drink a mint julep at 5 p.m. in a garden of the sunny, sunny city I have learned to call home. It's called Tucson, my one true love." Tucson, Arizona is unequivocally my one true love. Do I doubt that I have truly loved various exes? Yes. I have never doubted, since I first left my Tucson, that I truly loved it in absolute terms. Tucson cradles me. It kept me solitary when my youth, arrogance, and zealousness could have destroyed potential connections and relationships I wasn't ready to experience. Tucson feeds me avocados at affordable prices, burritos at all hours of the day and night, fresh roasted coffee in the mornings, and authentic tamales between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. Tucson serves me heavy mint juleps for $5 at 4 in the afternoon without judgment or expectation. Tucson drips hot, fresh, roasted espresso down my throat at 5 a.m. when I'm late for work. Tucson loves me. Tucson employs me. Tucson reminds me there are still fights worth fighting and still strangers worth knowing, whose eyes I've been catching for years. Tucson kicks dust in my face when I'm wrong and pushes me to exhaustion at 110 degrees in the middle of summer when I need to remember God and humility by jumping into a pool. Tucson gave me a community of Tucsonians who have formed many colonies of our kind in strange cities, so that when I travel, I rarely feel alone. Tucson taught me y'all and country boys in crisp white shirts on Sundays. Tucson gave me a reason to believe in having a hometown and speaking Spanish. Tucson taught me that not all Texans are evil. Tucson dragged me out of graves I've dug myself 100 times, claiming truths I was not ready to believe, that I'm still needed, that I'm still loved. Tucson dragged me by my hair or bald head, all dusty and tired, to friends' front porches, handed me a beer and whispered, "Drink, baby, drink. It'll make you feel better." And Tucson didn't lie. Tucson hugged me real close and told me it was time for me to leave, but that it still thought I was beautiful. Then Tucson called me back home. Tucson gave me a home, gave me a family I knew was finally real, didn't and wouldn't forget me. Tucson gave me my body back when I became a ghost, gave me the best doctor in the country, a neighbor in my backyard when I had cancer. Tucson fetched me. Tucson fed me, took care of me, kept me alive, and gave me warm, dusty backyards with ferns falling in my eyes when I had become accustomed to harsh steel and cities without eye contact. Tucson whispered in my ears late at night when I thought I was all alone, all the stories I would ever need to tell to be a writer. Tucson hugged me close and left me fearless. Tucson taught me a murderer's kiss and the most tender, feminine men I have ever known. Let me stomp on them and worry about punishment that was delivered later. Tucson fed me when I was hungry, left me when I was spoiled, and kicked me in the face when I got arrogant, taught me the difference between cheap and easy. Tucson gave me a few years of my life worth recording, that's still recording, that I think is still recording me. Written on May 18th, 2012.
Welcome. Welcome to this sacred space. Welcome to this memorial for Elizabeth Blue. Lord Elizabeth Claire Curlin Marr. Look at you. Look at all these people. Look around you. Strangers, family, loves, friends. When Lucia asked me to partake in this memorial, I had to ask myself, what is it we do at a memorial? What is it that brings us here? And as I pondered that, some of the things that have shown up include that we have, each of us, each one of us here in his or her own very particular way, shared a common miracle. We have partaken of a miracle called Elizabeth. Your presence here is a blessing to us all, for each of you carry with you your own particular experience of Elizabeth, a way of knowing her that could not exist were it not for you. We also come together because when a beloved dies, we are challenged to touch that terrible, terrible beauty of our own mortality. We are unequivocally reminded that we too shall one day leave this earth, pass from this place. This is a profound mystery. A profound mystery that most of us spend the majority of our lives doing the best we can to ignore. But when we do that, we do so in our peril. For when we ignore the intransigent reality of death, we risk losing that equally stunning, unlikely miracle that we live. That we exist at all. It is a wonderment beyond expression. So today I invite you to take in with a heart full of wonder the many, many Elizabeths that you will encounter here today. I invite you to share the Elizabeth you carry with you from your own heart. You'll all be much richer if you do. For whether she has been a stitch or an entire panel in the tapestry of your life, whether those threads have been light or dark or a confounding, frustrating, amazing combination of both, it is too late for you. She is woven into your life, just as we are woven into hers. So today we celebrate the immense blessing and uniqueness of Elizabeth's life, even as we mourn the still stunning reality of her absence. Death has come. Even as before it, life came. It takes courage to be a human being. It's one of the reasons the original peoples don't assign the title human being rightly. For to be fully human is to give yourself over to loving that which will one day leave you. When you think about it, living your way through life is really a reckless, foolhardy proposition. Heartbreak is virtually guaranteed. And surely no soul would ever cast him or herself into love's torrents if that same heartbreak didn't somehow also fill us with incomprehensible gratitude. Personally, it's beyond my capacity of understanding to know how it is that I can feel so rich and so robbed at the same time. I marvel at it, really. I know better, but I am mad as hell. I know better, but I am full to overflowing with gratitude. I'm grateful for Elizabeth. Elizabeth Blue was born Elizabeth Clare Curlin Maher on January 12th, 1990. She died this September 23rd, 2012, in the wee hours of the morning before the sun could rise. her many incarnations and expressions, which include, though are not limited to, surely, lady, queen, goddess, intellect, activist, feminist, artist, wise woman, punk, bitch, cat lover, cat, lover, woman, alchemical barista. Among all these incarnations and expressions, she was also the beloved daughter of Greg Maher and Lucia Maya, and stepdaughter of Zelie Duvauchelle, sister of Juliana Dudley Maher, granddaughter of Jane Hans, Robert Curlin, Paul and Alexandra Hans, and Jean and Jack Maher, niece of Tashi Curlin and Terry Grover, and of David Hans, cousin of Willa and Mia Curlin, great-granddaughter of Judith and Herbert Gold, Bess and Emmanuel Curlin, Mary and Dudley Pratt, and John and Lottie Maher. She was also beloved friend to many. And at this time, I would like to invite a few of those friends, Kathleen Bowman, Felice Espinosa, Josh Bowman, and Samantha Salazar, to come up one at a time and to share the Elizabeth they each knew and loved with us.
Elizabeth. 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 John spoke of the knowing better and being angry. I know that too. Remembering the first time I met Elizabeth, I think she was about 11, and I had gone over to see Eugene Zelie. And Elizabeth answered the door, and there stood before me this tender, beautiful, angelic face that was so loving and so angelic. Went out from under her shirt, popped a rodent. I do believe it was her pet rat. And I knew, this girl's got range and we'll be friends forever. And it's so. We'll be friends forever. We had the honor of Elizabeth coming and staying with us a few years back for about a week or so. And it was a week filled with shopping, which was delightful, and I don't think Tom ever knew how much we spent. But, you know, I was shopping with Elizabeth, and she looked adorable in everything. So we said, take it. And in her own words, it was the trip where we explored raw food and eating to the best of health, while simultaneously I introduced her to Starbucks caramel macchiatos. Range. We both love that range. And that is who Elizabeth will always be for me, that wonderful, wonderful range of angelic to the very, very, very earthy part of herself. Coming here, driving into Tucson, I was somewhat concerned that it would be really, really difficult to come into the city. And Elizabeth not be here in the way that I had known her be here. And so just last night, as the sun was setting, we were driving into Tucson. And I looked up. And there, between the mountains, was the most beautiful pink and blue sky. And I knew I didn't have to worry. Elizabeth was here. And she would always be here. And this morning, after a fitful night, I got up very, very early, and I opened the curtain. And there, in the very early morning sky, dawning, was the moon and Venus. Elizabeth's here. She's gone nowhere, and I can come back to Tucson, the city that loved her and helped her, and know that I'll always find her here and wherever I go. And I'm going to be a little bit selfish now and take another moment. At the time that Lucia contacted me and said that Elizabeth was going on hospice, and they were bringing her home, I knew I couldn't make the journey at that time. And so each morning, I sat down to my harp and I played a song. Some of you may recognize that it's a Duvauchelle piece from the New World Symphony, the Largo. Some of you may recognize it as the tune Going Home. For me, it's Elizabeth's song. And I'm going to do my best to play it for you now. And the words, I was going to sing, but I can't now, are going home, going home. I'm just going home. The work's all done. Cares laid by. Time to fret no more. Loved ones there, waiting now through an open door.
going to do my best to read this. I came across a Hafiz poem this morning. Thank you, Michelle. I had the great privilege of sharing that poem with Elizabeth before she left. And there's a quote that reminds me of her. Hafiz says, "Venus leaned in and whispered in my ear this morning, 'Don't you know that she is just a mirror shining your light?'" I'm Felice. I had the great privilege of being Elizabeth's teacher and friend. It's daunting to be here to speak on a person. How to speak, even share about Elizabeth, about anyone. The multiplicity of any individual expression. While we all have a unique expression, we are all so many people in one. Not to mention Elizabeth. And words. They fall short. They are so limiting. Elizabeth taught us that at the end of her transition. She showed us the presence of love. And it was silent, without words, without thought, the pure, potent experience of love. That is what she gave me, and that is what I call grace. Elizabeth gave me an extraordinary experience of grace in the presence of her love. What a heart. What a being. But she was always graceful. The first time I met Elizabeth, she was 15. The first time I met her, I remember being struck by two things. Her otherworldly beauty. Sometimes reading silently, she took on the most ethereal qualities. And her quiet presence and grace. As per her way, she just kind of appeared in a reading chair in my center at Keno School one day. She had just moved here from Berkeley, and what would be a long period of time of her trying to figure out where home was had just begun. And I recall she watched. That first time we spoke, she was observing and listening to all of the nonsense around her. Some teenage boys making some asinine comment about women and girls with some kind of knowing. And then I watched as Elizabeth laughed at them like playthings, like little boys, and unleashed with absolute coolness some stealthy, witty, wise comment that left them both feeling scolded, but totally ignored. Dismissed even. Meanwhile, she chuckled her nervous, quiet little girl laugh and went right back to her book unfazed. I found out, and I knew she was powerful even then. Then in her quiet, willful way, she began appearing in my homeroom until she eventually became a member of it. She was bright, obviously, but not just how you think of it. I mean bright, like a light. Her intellect was special because it was conscious. Always she came from a deeper place, with things a wider, more profound understanding. And she wrote. She was a writer. Beautiful pieces, vignettes, stories, and poems. Poems and poems, a poet at heart. And what I loved about her most is that while she would do assignments for me or others and work on them with us willingly, her real work, she always kept to herself. Lest you forget she was sly like that. One may have mistaken it for self-consciousness, but it was wisdom. She knew to respect what really spoke through her. She took the tools, did the work on all the nuts and bolts, but when it came to her inspired pieces, she approached them with a deep reverence, a deeper understanding that what spoke through her was sacred. She had true wisdom that way. Her being understood the true nature of reality, the nature of existence, and her existence. That is why her character, Elizabeth, the person, was always questioning it, always exploring it. I believe she created and brought in a class to Kino exploring alternative healing paradigms from Reiki to shamanism at 15. Whatever she approached when given the room, she approached with depth. She lived her life intensely. At 18, 20, 21, 22, at 15, she was living life more intensely than most of us live by the time we're 80. Lovers. Who has so many lovers by 22? Who can speak of them with such wisdom? Only Elizabeth. And the color pink. Whatever she goes into, she goes in with that. And then blue. As we all know, when she landed on blue, and all things blue, she went deep into blue. One of the great gifts I used to tell her she gave me was a gift to watch her grow into the incredible woman she became. And who was that? Who was she? Like goddess. Always changing. Evolving. Playing. In the Hindu religion, there are hundreds, thousands of expressions of the divine goddess. Some are angelic, some are beautiful and wreathed in flowers, and some wear garlands of bloody skulls. All to reflect the infinite multiplicity of the divine expression, you, the diversity of life. Thinking back on Elizabeth the past year, I had the chance to chuckle at how beautifully she mirrored this. When I first saw her at my house a year ago, November, I was met by a dark-haired beauty decked out in a pencil skirt, a button-down shirt and leather black boots with a cigarette in one hand and a vodka tonic in the other. I was at a gin. Months later in May, I was met with another goddess, this time bedecked in a wig, in Indian moccasins, a Pendleton-style sweater, and a purse with fringe, a cigarette in her hand, maybe a joint. All the while reminding me of the story Kaylin shared about a time when Elizabeth gave away a bunch of her clothes because she decided she was only going to wear black and white. She was light, and she is infinite. And so she transformed at the speed of light, transforming infinitely. When I saw her in May, she was scared. She was anxious about the cancer coming back, about what if she hadn't caught it. She was vulnerable. And then months later in August, with utter grace, we watched her transform again with surrender. We watched her open herself up to all that is left. Love. And we watched as she taught, showed, literally radiated to us, me, the greatest lesson a teacher and master can share and learn. The greatest lesson a master can show a student. That she was loved, is loved, as am I, as are you, as is each of us. like to end with another quote by Hafiz. It speaks to me like Elizabeth. Tonight the subject is love. And it is every night until we die. I love you so much, Elizabeth. I do not know you. Some of you I do know. I love you all very much. We will miss you. Thank you.
Elizabeth, I still remember the first time we met in Blanket. The image of you with dreaded blue hair and a nose ring, yet brimming with elegance, is still vivid in my memory. Two young souls thrown into a profound experience. Not a woman I've ever met has been able to infuriate me more or make me laugh harder. Throughout the trip, I was struck by your beauty, your insight, and the love you seem to radiate. Without knowing it, you helped induct me into a circle that has shaped the man I am today. That trip culminated us climbing an ancient king's pyramid in pure white at midnight. Mary Elena guided us in circle. And I remember walking down, I felt pure and free of the weights life had put on me. Sharing that experience with you bound you to my heart forever. The next encounter we had was in Tucson, once again in circle. I remember your laughter, bright and crisp, as Guy and I engaged in a wrestling match to test our manliness. At the end of the weekend, the circle at Prague, we had the funnest party I've ever been a part of. You, Katrina, and I gathered, as we spiritedly called it, an amoeba. They crawled up into Anne-Marie's room. The laughter that filled the room as 20 people climbed on top of the retired matriarchs, my grandmother and Anne-Marie. They protested, but how do you reason with them? My last encounter with you was when I was doing my internship down here. You were the quintessential staple that held my sanity together. I remember being inspired by how you lived independently, how strong you were, and how thoughtfully and consciously you lived your life. You'll never know how much internal conflict I was going through and how grateful I am for the anchor you provided me. Elizabeth, you were the sister I never had. I hope you understand the profound impact your love has had on me. I carry that love around with me, and I use it as a ward against despair. You will forever live in the love you've given me and others, as we in turn love because of what we've received. The goddess that is you has achieved immortality. I love you so much.
I just want to begin by thanking Lucia, Greg, Anna, and Jane, because I don't know how I would have made it through this entire experience if it wasn't for the love of Elizabeth's family and acknowledging our closeness, and just, you guys have been really wonderful, and thank you so much. I'm going to try to get through this, but you might have to be patient with me. Trying to figure out what to say today has been one of the most draining and difficult things I've ever had to do. And what I realized is that these mechanisms of my body, mind, and language are all too ill-equipped to portray with justice the gravity of the loss that I feel. Elizabeth Blue was my soulmate. When I met her, I was blown away by the bizarre and beautiful world that was wrapped up in this tiny, whimsical creature. Everything about Elizabeth was unique. Everything about Elizabeth
was complex. She wasn't only beautiful, she was so captivatingly beautiful that no eye could avoid her. And when she had hooked you, you were blown away by her beauty, which was at once confident, sultry, innocent, inviting, and biting. I've always described her as a siren of sorts. I used to tell my friends, wait until you meet my girl Elizabeth Blue. You'll fall in love with her. Everyone does. And I was never proven wrong. We've all been in love with Elizabeth Blue. Elizabeth Beautiful, Elizabeth Bizarre. She had stories which grabbed you by the throat and choked you until tears ran from your eyes. She loved to dance and was infamous for a move which she patented, which we call the worm. She would write never-ending canons about cats and sing them all day long. If I can remember one in particular, our favorite line was, "Cats, they're coming for you. Look out!" She was a muse to photographers and painters. She wrote poetry and developed complex character voices which reflected the subject matter to perform them with. She drew hilariously uncanny images of human-nosed alien cats, the Queen of Hearts and bear-shaped balloons. She listened to Angela Davis speeches as she cleaned house and walked around town. She read constantly about social justice and feminism. She loved the Black Panthers. She wanted a white kitten to name little Elizabeth. She cherished her own cat Blue over most anything else in life, and he her. She was the most loyal and dedicated friend I or anyone could fathom. We spent countless hours milling over ideas for our project of creating a network of sisterhood amongst Tucson's women, a group we appropriately called the Grown-Ass Women. Or GAW. The tenets of GAW were that we understood it's hard to be a female-bodied individual in today's society, and through sharing experiences, providing emotional support and friendship, curbing girl-on-girl envy and hatred, we can make it a little easier and safer for all of us. We wanted to show girls it's okay to speak out. You must be confident, and each of every one of us is sickening and strong. Although we never got to take God to the heights we imagined, one of the most interesting things about this experience, for me in particular, has been the number of times I've heard from friends and strangers alike that they mourned my loss with me, because when they would see us together out and about, they could see all of the things that we wanted to portray. Our friendship inspired them through confidence, loyalty, and love. And I know this would make her so happy to know. I can't talk about all of the lessons in character which my tiny wonder imbued within me. It would take as much time as we were friends. But there is one thing I'd like to share with everyone today. Within our friendship, we always tried to make practice of turning negatives into positives, and that is what I would like to do right now. Know this, the passing of Elizabeth Blue is a tragedy, no doubt, but there are some wonderful things to come of it. There has been a phenomena occurring amongst our friends since Elizabeth went into hospice. We've coined the phrase, the EB effect, to describe it. 2012 has been by far, in a way, one of the most difficult years for the people I know. But as of recently, I've seen a change in the people who surrounded Elizabeth and loved her and cared for her. For some, it has been a surge of creativity, a revitalization of their artistic identity. Songs have been written about her. For others, it has been the security of finding a home or a job or deciding to go to school, the opportunity to go on tour or star in a film. Some of my friends have found companionship with very special people, and I have come out of this situation with unshakable confidence and urgency to keep reaching out to people, to keep being strong for people, and to never hold back any amount of love. Even though Elizabeth has left this earth, I know she left knowing with a certainty that I loved her and that she was the best friend I've ever had. Our whole friendship, we dedicated so much energy to letting the other know how much we loved each other, and there were no words left unspoken, no feelings left unexpressed. And I hope it provides some comfort to you to know that Elizabeth, being the celestial, otherworldly, alien goddess that she was, seemed to know her whole life that something like this would happen to her. She was born an old soul, and she was too big of a person to be contained in any human body, much less her tiny one. She documented herself through countless journals, short stories, voice recordings, videos, poems, planners, and pictures. Before she went into surgery, she confessed stories to me which she had never told anyone, made a painting which I had been asking her for years, and left a note on my door in the morning just to say hello. She was at peace when I visited her thereafter, and had the depth of the universe in her eyes. I lost the person that understood me the most, and the person I understood the best. But I do know this: Elizabeth would want you to cry. The tears would flatter her. One of the first times I went to visit her, after she had moved into hospice, I was telling her about people's reactions to hearing about her moving into hospice, and I told her, you know, some of the boys cried, and she said, "They cry." And I said, "Yes," and she said, "They're very sad." And I said, "Everyone is very, very sad, Elizabeth." And then she just got the biggest smile. But do not let those tears only be of loss. Let them be tears of enlightenment and appreciation and inspiration. Let them water whatever arid planes lie within your soul and carry on. Thank you.
So as we've heard, and as many of you know, Elizabeth was a particularly gifted poet and artist. And one of the amazing things about poetry is that not only does it give us the opportunity to see the point of view, the perspective the poet has on the world, but also, and I think in some ways even more astonishingly, it gives us a chance to see what in this whole vast universe deemed Elizabeth the one to say, "Here, notice me, write about me." And so I'm very pleased that we're about to hear a handful of Elizabeth's poetry read. And as you listen, I invite you not only to relish the clarity and beauty of it, but also to take in and notice just what it was that nicked her poet's heart in this vast world that she loved so much. And so, I'd like to call up our bards today, who are Elizabeth's grandmother, Jane Hans, her aunt, Ashi Curlin, her sister, Juliana Maher, who will also be reading a letter that Elizabeth wrote, her godmother, Victoria Joy, and her stepmother, Zelie Duvauchelle.
In reference to Samantha's mentioning Blue Cat, I would just tell everybody that Blue is living with me now in Boston. Oh. Very, very much loved, and still Elizabeth's cat. So 6 years ago at Christmas, Hanukkah time, Elizabeth. 6 years ago at Christmas or Hanukkah time, Elizabeth gave me this, her first handmade book, and this is paste paper cover that she made herself. I just think it's so gorgeous. And in it she copied out poem she'd written from age 9 to 16, a selection. And I'm going to read the first poem in the book. She wrote it when she was 9 years old. Here I sit, knowing, hoping, guessing that I am safe. Here I sit, thinking, hoping, knowing that I am surrounded by the spirits, the ones dead but still so alive, so living, so aware of me, for I am truly one of them.
This is a poem that Elizabeth wrote. It didn't have a title or where it was written by hand, so I'll just read it as it is. Twinkling with motherly love, she knows her destiny is next to nothing, but still she holds her head high. Her angel child holds out a bird to her. Why a bird, she asks, so you can have wings to fly, like me, your angel child. She smiles a real smile, not a smile she smiles for the passers-by, but a true smile, a loving smile that lasts forever. And then she flies away to freedom, freedom, freedom. It was written in spring of 2000 at age 10.
I know, right? I was supposed to read a poem, or like not supposed to, but it was talked about. And I looked at it last night, and it was from when she was 10, and I was like, God, I'm not reading this. Like, this is so dark. So, instead, yeah, okay. So instead, I decided to read not the entire thing because it's like long, but just a very small excerpt of a letter that she wrote to me for my 18th birthday. And I said that I'd pick that apart to my mom, but I hadn't. But it's all kind of the same sentiment, so I'm just going to read actually just a sentence. She was actually quoting me back when she mentioned, she says, as you once said, I've always known you're the coolest person who's ever talked to me. Now I know that. Or I've always known that you are the coolest person who will ever talk to me. I've always suspected you were the bravest. Now I know it. You're my sister and my other half, and I will always come back for you. And then she writes, sorry to quote you back at yourself, but you said it best. You are my sister, my other half, and I will always come back for you. And that told me to read the letter. And then there was one other thing that I just thought of while I was sitting here that I wanted to say. Was that, interestingly enough, the first person who I told when Elizabeth had cancer, and when I found out that she was going to die, that she was going to hospice care, was someone who I didn't know that well, but a girl I went to school with, who I didn't find out until after I told her both of those things, that her middle name was Elizabeth. And I was like, wow, I didn't know that because I usually know people's middle names. And she said, no, I hate my middle name, no offense to your sister, but I think, you know that I like to think of myself as being really original and it's a really common name. And I was like, well, I can't really argue on that because we're talking about a name you have in common with my sister, so like, clearly. I then pointed out that her last name is Klein, and she was like, yeah, that's also normal, I know, but I can't change it. And then, also interestingly, when I first told her that Elizabeth was going to hospice, the same girl said to me, it was on a Facebook chat, she said, and I prefaced this with, you can't feel sorry for me, I'm going to tell you something, but you can't feel sorry for me. But her response was, do you know what you're going to say? And I said, what? Do you mean at her funeral? And she said, yes. Fuck, I'm being so callous right now. And I realized, in retrospect, that how very fitting it is that her middle name is Elizabeth, because I think that the reason that I told her was because
that aspect of her, that not wanting to be named Elizabeth because it was too common, is exactly what reminded me of Elizabeth. I think that's why she ended up being that person at that moment. And I think that Elizabeth would have liked that Suzanne hates her real name. So, yeah, that's it.
This is another poem by Elizabeth, written for Lucia for Mother's Day, 2003.
What is today? Yesterday. That is what they are. There are no days anymore, just moments. The sun sets and the moon rises. What is today? What is now? Does anything ever end? If we can visit it in memory. What is today? Yesterday, tomorrow. Moments, that is what they are. There are no days anymore, just moments. The sun sets and the moon rises. What is today? What is now? Does anything ever end if we can visit it in memory? What is today? Yesterday, tomorrow. Moments. That is what they are.
So the step-parent, step-child relationship is a complex one. And ours was no different. Both Elizabeth and I are very strong personalities. And living in the same house sometimes. Very creative, very strong, very stubborn women, and also we had a great love for each other and a great respect for each other and a soul recognition for each other. And there are not too many white girls that I know that have that kind of depth that she carried, and the range that she carried. I'm going to read a poem by Elizabeth. It was written in November 2004 for my 45th birthday. And it speaks to this soul recognition that I'm talking about. I walk in the divine forests of wonder. I see truths clear as crystal that grows from the mountains of challenge. I see many lies as foggy and beautifully spun as a spider's web in the fog of our minds. But underneath it all, I experience. I strive to experience everything. Like snowflakes on eyelashes right in front of my face. The world is in my eyes, but I'm blinking it away, trying to see everything else. And you, who can see this in me, I know that you too have seen the divine forest of wonder. You know the soft ground from which questions spring, anxious as fairies to weave their dance around you. Gorgeous. You know the canopy of the trees in which birds cry out their own songs of love, truth, and sorrow. You know what it is to gaze up at these birds with the purest of admiration and wonderment, soaked in the sheer beauty of love. I'm going to read that again. You know what it is to gaze up at these birds with the purest admiration and wonderment, soaked in the sheer beauty of love. You know what it is to wander in this beautiful forest covered with the dewdrops of life. You who have been here long before me, you dear wise one who knows. You are now my guide, you show me the way, and with every ounce of my being, I am grateful. I bow to you and take your hand, for we both walk in the divine forest of wonder. Elizabeth Meagher.
It's hard, but because I can't think of what I want to say when everybody's talking to me right before I'm supposed to stand up. So it can truly be inspired by being right here, right now. And Elizabeth had a way of shifting the way we think of time, because being with her was an experience of both time travel, timelessness, time warping, and a kind of unconditional acceptance that love is where we are. I, through some incredibly miraculous and generous invitation from Greg and Lucia, was invited to be present for the birth of their first daughter, Elizabeth. So I was able to navigate a camera and click shots as she left the warm, yummy, ever-stretching globe that was Lucia's belly and womb, and enter the breathing world, joining us and revealing herself and her beauty. We could already feel her and her beauty. And I suspect she was making her way for some time before that day of her arrival in San Francisco. And she was met with so much joy, and a new time began. The time of Elizabeth being a part of our family and hearts. So, I've also had the privilege of living near her for a number of years, and I would find myself at Greg and Lucia's house, accepting more invitations to eat dinner and hang out and watch the like half-hour TV programs that Elizabeth was allowed to watch. And I was asked to be a godmother. So, you know, that really is up for grabs, since the religious traditions are pretty mixed up from all of us. We never made an agreement about what that would be. So I think we just let it ride and unravel and roll, which has been the best roll I've had. I consider Elizabeth, like Elise and probably many people sitting in this room, a great teacher. And how funny that this little person being born, her presence would sort of bestow upon me this title, where I think I better know a lot, and, you know, God and Mother, those are kind of synonymous big things. Which I was quite ready to take on the mantle of, yet I was falling in love. And we have had many shapeshifts through the years, experiencing her from a baby and growing into a girl, and beginning to be
big girl and teenager and young woman and woman, there have been more examples of cross-pollinating that I can mention. One story that I love to share about Elizabeth is when she was 3, and I came over to visit, and I had red nail polish on, and I asked her, "What do you think of my red nails?" Thinking we were in sync right here, because she was already really fashion conscious and had her ears pierced. And, she looked at me, and then she looked away, and she said, then she looked back, "Did you know that there are whales dying in the ocean?" So first, I adopted a more conservative approach, like, oh, she's only 3. And so I said, "Do you mean that when you see my red nail polish, you think, oh, there are whales dying in the ocean?" "Yes. That's what I'm saying." And and so I no longer wear nail polish. that was over. And that small tweaking of consciousness and cause and effect and interconnectedness and relationship has stayed with me. That teaching continues to teach me about my choices. Hello, Elizabeth. I want to just fast forward to when she was initially diagnosed, because this time has been so potent. And because this has been like a time warp for a life to be lived out. And being a godparent, I thought that I'd be going first. As a matter of fact, in a phone conversation with Anne-Marie, while I was spending the night in the hospital waiting room, she suggested with urgency, and you've got to get into bed with her. You have got to. So I gave her all sorts of reasons about how I might have to do that with some finesse. She kept encouraging me through repetition, which is a great way to learn something, that I needed to do that. So the next day, she's still intubated and she's strapped down and she's had her strokes, and it is looking frightening for me as someone who adores her to see her suffering. And I would say in this process, I didn't see a lot of suffering, and to see any, and this particular suffering, was also a way of bending time, because it felt unendurable. So gratefully, and having to assume a little bit more confidence than I had, I told Lucia I was gonna do that. Is that okay? And she said yes. So I got in, and I could see she was afraid and very agitated, and because we were in a real crossroads right at that time. And I said, "Do you want me to talk about death?" And she said, she couldn't talk. And I said, "Okay, well, and she has this way of making me be really honest. So I wanted to have the exact right thing to say, because, I am the god and everything. But it was not coming, and I felt kind of nervous. So I said, "Okay, well, the truth is, I thought that I'd be going first, and so that when it was your time to come, I could just open up my arms and catch you. But now you're going first, so I don't know what it's like, because I've never died, but I will tell you that I've heard stories that it is painless, and it is beautiful, and there's a lot of light, and a lot of love, and I've heard stories that people can see animals and guides and beloveds and angels before death. She listened and I listened. And it didn't seem like that moment was right then, and I think we were all quite grateful for that. And I scooted out of bed, and then Lucia took my place. When she was home and in the bosom of her mother's house, which is where she had been craving to be for some time, it felt like much had settled. And when I initially got there, which was 10 days into that journey, I was still quite concerned as a beginner's mind. And Elizabeth's already light years ahead of me now. I'm still concerned about whether she's going to live and die and when. So I'm thinking, well, is there any chance for a miracle? Is she going to live? Or, well, are we preparing for her death? And this little seesaw would completely melt as soon as I was next to her and by her bed. And better yet, if we were touching. And even better yet, if we were touching and making eye contact. And even better yet, if she was tapping something out. And even better yet, if she was doing things like this. And her commitment to this was like breathing in something I have been so wanting and so wanting to believe in. That between life and death, there is something much larger, where those questions melt and evaporate and are no longer useful or interesting. She was showing me through that visit and the following that everything is love. And every fiber of her being and every conscious, which she was very conscious and deliberate, every move she made with that kind of graceful, slow dance of a gesture, including where she would put her eyes, was a kind of defining the endless and eternal nature of love's undying quality. And although she has shape-shifted from the infant that could not speak to the little girl who could say all sorts of things and put on plays and sing, to the writer who had many words and had an artistry around how those were put into a voice and onto a page, and then back into very few words. She could speak, and she chose not to. The thread of the content of what Elizabeth embodied from the beginning to the end, which is half of it, to the now. That she showed me that the quality of our relationship, and I would guess that's the same for each of us, that piece doesn't change. And that the way we may look, or that I may look to Elizabeth, that she may look to me, the way things appear, that nothing needs to be translated when the heart is full of itself. And that's what Elizabeth was for me, a very, very full, blossoming, radiant, effulgent heart. And I am so grateful to have her as a teacher and to have her as a godchild and her as someone who cared enough to teach me. Thank you.
we are now in the deep waters of the deep blue of Elizabeth Blue, we'll now treat ourselves to a glorious photographic reminiscence composed by Elizabeth's mother, Lucia.
No, I won't be afraid.
You are my heaven on
Mine is the first time we used to go to the East Coast to visit my grandmother and we fly home from Brazil. It was the first year that I was alone with her, not with her parents. I was 6, so she was 9, and I just turned 6, and it was summer. And we were flying together on a company line or something, but and I was back when flight still served food. We got, I don't know whatever we were serving, and I ate some of it, and I was, you bit more so than I am now, a very picky eater then. And part of this, like, tray table thing for the plane was like a tiny like salad, which I obviously didn't want to eat. And I was like, you have to eat it. And I was like, no, I don't. And she was like, yes, you do. And I was like, no, I don't. Like, why do I have to do that? It's like ice cream lettuce. I don't like it. And it was a terrible salad. Like, even if you like that, like, and she was like, you have to eat it because if you don't, then the flight attendant's feelings will be hurt. And I'm still not sure whether she actually thought that, like, the flight attendants individually prepared the meal, or the more likely thing is she just thought I was, like, young enough and, like, naive enough to believe her. But I was, like, spent, like, 10 minutes trying to convince her that they wouldn't notice and that I moved it around the plate. And she didn't agree with me, so I ate, like, 2 bites of it. It was terrible. I realized later, didn't eat herself.
Anybody else ready to share?
Okay.
I just remember the first time I met Elizabeth. I've been best friends with Samantha since I was like a sophomore in high school. And I've always been like her best friend, and she was my best friend, and no one else was really part of the equation. And when Elizabeth started hanging out with Sam, I was extremely jealous and very resistant to the whole idea of adding a third girl to the group. But Elizabeth was always so patient and so kind to me, and I'm just so grateful to her for that. She always taught me like so many things about being a badass and still being beautiful, like being graceful but being tough, you know, and sticking your guns and stuff. And I don't know, I'm just so amazed by like the life that she lived, and you know, it just makes so much sense, like the people that she's, you know, spent time with, and just like the person that she became. I don't know, I just wanted to share that. One time, well, the first time I went to go visit Elizabeth after she had been put in hospice, I ran to her apartment to try to find something of hers to wear because I just wanted that closeness with me. And I just found like this striped shirt that she had, and I put it on, and I drove to Lucia's. And when I came in, Elizabeth held the shirt in her hand and was just feeling it, and she told me, I think I have a shirt like this. And I said, yeah, it's yours, I stole it. I'm sorry, I hope you don't mind. And she said, well, it looks nice on you, but I would have picked different shorts. And here she is, like, laying in her hospice bed, giving me advice on how to dress still. And I just held her hand really tightly, and I said, I'm sorry, next time I'll wear something better. And she told me, well, perhaps you could wear one of my rompers. And I was like, well, I don't know if you've forgotten, but you're significantly smaller than I am, and I don't think I could fit inside one of your rompers. And I told her, you know, you've always been my tiny wonder. And she grabbed my hand and she just held it and squeezed it and told me that I'd always been her goddess giant. And she just said it over and over again. And it was so touching that she was just so detached from this physical realm, but still had these associations, you know, and she was able to bring those out. And we all went as a group of friends to go visit Elizabeth and say our goodbyes, and everyone got to hold her and look into her eyes and say the things that they needed to say, and it was beautiful because she
hands she held, some people's faces she touched. And when we were all getting ready to say goodbye, we stood up to leave, and we said, "Bye, Elizabeth," and she raised her arm, and she waved goodbye to all of us, and she kept waving until we were all out of the house, and that was the last time we saw her. Just about most anyone got to go visit her, and at that time she was very far gone, but I mean, just so much love in her for her, wonderful friends and everything, that she just had the strength in her, and it was one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life.
My name is Zelie. I met Elizabeth on the banks of a river, and that river was not in this world. I, of course, visited her in his time and place, and she came to me, and we worked together in her process. On the night before her surgery, I was sitting with her at the hospital, and she said, "When I'm all done with this, I want to be your apprentice." I don't know if her asked that before, probably, but I said, "Yeah, yeah, of course." And from that point on, I continued to meet her by that river in that other world, and she would see me and hold my hand, and we would sit, and sometimes there was confusion, and sometimes there was misty, and towards the end, as I would come to Lucia's and sit with her, we would journey together between those worlds, and she would be dancing, and I would look at her, and she would smile at me, and I would say, "Ah, you're dancing." Yeah, that was what she really wanted at the end, was to dance, and then there would be this little moment of this mischievousness, and it was so beautiful to be in both of those places as she would move back and forth. And on the last day that I was there, we were sort of journeying together, and I was looking at her face, and she was looking at me, and we were holding hands, and she shifted and transformed, and she was, and she had been, and she is this bodhisattva, this beautiful bodhisattva, very pure, very present, the most present. And I just looked at her and said, "Wow, you're really prepared for this." And she was sort of knowingly sort of nodded. She was prepared for this. And then, towards the last days, I was every day just in my checking in with her in that world in the river, and just checking in, how was she doing, was anything, and towards the end she began putting her feet in the water, and I was like, okay, yeah. And she would get a little closer, and as that began to happen in the last days, the other side totally open, and it was a crowd of people, like a crowd of other beings, of loved ones. It just felt like generations of ancestors, and so much welcoming. And what really came to me was in one of our last little conversations, I said, "Is there anything that you wish? Is there anything that you still wish for?" And she smiled and she said, "I want to be famous." And I I just knew at that moment when it opened up and there was just a multitude. Yeah, you got that one.
Are you ready?
This is a piece of reading they learned this morning, and it should be played.
One of the first times Elizabeth and Duvauchelle and Zelie came to visit me in Molokai in Hawaii, so this came to me because there's a really, outside of my house there's a really deep channel and it's very blue, and we called it the Blue. And the Blue was an infamous place, and I told him many stories about the sharks in there. So they every day they would say, will you take us out to the Blue? Will you take us out to the Blue? Yes, we're gonna go. So one day we all got, the three of us, Elizabeth, Julia, and I, we swam out there, and it's a drop off. So it's shallow, and then all of a sudden it drops off, and it's you can't see the bottom. And so they said, okay, we want to look over the edge where you hold our feet. So I stood on the edge with their feet. And they went out over the Blue and looked down, and they both looked back at me like, don't let us go. And I didn't. It was quite a thrill. But the look on their faces are priceless, and I remember that forever.
I am Nanny Gray. No, I'm Nana. That was my mother, Nanny Gray. Elizabeth was such a unique and special person from the time she popped into the world. And having gone through a year of very difficult times for all of us, I made a pledge to myself that every day I will try to do something to make Elizabeth proud. I don't know what it'll be. It'll be serendipity, and it may be one thing one day, and another thing another day. But I think you all love Elizabeth so much that I would challenge you to do the same thing in your own life. Now, our last name is Meagher, which is Irish. Of course, in Gaelic, they don't pronounce the E and the G, and so if you see our name spelled out, M-E-A-G-H-E-R, we are the Meaghers. But we answer to Meagher. Or if it starts with M, it's close enough. When I was teaching school, I taught my kids in 3rd grade that you remembered my name by saying,
it's like Maher went to the kitchen. So the first day of school, the secretary got a note from a mother who came in with a note that said, I don't know what her name is, but it's something to go about going to the kitchen. She said, oh, you mean Mrs. Maher. So Elizabeth, for 22 and a half years, I'm sure suffered some of those same pangs of hearing her name pronounced Meagher. But I would be remiss if I didn't share with you our family's favorite Irish blessing. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rain falls softly upon your field. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of his hands.
I didn't know Elizabeth very well, but I kind of knew her, and I remember once she came to visit me at my house, and her cat climbed into our couch because there's a rip in it. And it was funny because I was like so excited for her to come meet us because I knew I really liked Juliana because she had come to visit us before. And I just knew I was going to like her, and I really did. And it was so much fun. And it was funny when her cat climbed into the couch because she kept trying to coax him out, and he was just sitting there, and he stayed there the whole night. So it was fun. So I know there's always her presence all around the house because she was such a joy to have there. I'm Violet's brother, and I remember that. And so here's the cast right here, and there's like the scalpel right here. It was like ripped down, so Blue got climbed through that, and there was like something down there. I do not want to know what it is, and it did not smell good, and I do not know what Blue did with that.
The ready faces.
I'd like to share a dream that Elizabeth had in the hospital that impressed me, and so I'd like to share it so it could be all of our dreams also. And that is, it was her re-diagnosis, and it was after her first chemo treatment of that re-diagnosis. And she was pretty grumpy about the whole thing, you know, not really, just a little over it, kind of. And that there was just that attitude. You know, this is a lot, and indeed it was. So I came in the morning, and she said, I had a dream, and she shared it. And it was that Maria Elena and Jacqueline are at home, and Maria Elena calls her, and she picks up the phone, and Maria Elena says, be kind to each person that walks through that door. And I said, wow, well, what do you think the dream means? And she says, I think it means that I really have to be kind to each person that walks through. And I said, wow. And so we checked in, how are you doing? Because she took it quite seriously. You know, this meant a commitment. And she said she was doing quite well and making friends. And even when she was a little grumpy, she said, I'm nice to them, then they're nicer to me. Right? And that continued through her whole process in the next 2 months, where her kindness became synonymous with her being alive.
I'm Gail. First time I met Elizabeth was in Seattle, and I drove her back down to Tucson with Gina. Moved back to Tucson, and me and all the friends loved to dance really good at the house, and I remember we were having a dance party just in the living room, and she was just standing there, just moving, just not really into it like we were. And we had to put on the song Salt and Pepper. We're going to push it by Salt and Pepper. So if she likes it, so she can get going with us. She did. It's really fun. And ever since we've been having parties, she came over, she would dance with us like we would. So it's really nice to see her comfort with us.
My name's Andrew. The first time, it's funny because I didn't really, I didn't know, I knew Sam through, I knew Elizabeth through Sam, through a bunch of my friends. It's like we have a pretty close friendship. We've known each other for a really long time. And at first when she came around, we were all just like, oh, she wasn't getting, cause we say ridiculous stuff all the time. Just because that's just who we are. And she's like, she wasn't getting it. We're like, And I just remember that, I don't know, it just took her a little bit of time, and then she just started kind of like easing into our friendship. And and everyone, she'd come around more and more, and I don't know, I just think, I'm just gonna miss Elizabeth because it was, I don't know, she just became really close with all of our friends, and I don't know, we had a lot of good times. I remember one time we went over to this club downtown, and I felt really bad because she was doing her little worm dance. These guys were coming over and they're trying to, I don't know. And I just want to really I'm gonna miss Elizabeth because she's fun. We've all had a lot of fun. I think that's what's really important is that we just all had a good time. So
I'm Lucy. I met Elizabeth in Seattle when we were both visiting, and then we both went back to Tucson. I was like, oh, this girl's cool, we're gonna hang out. And the first time we hung out, she came and picked me up in her awesome green Mustang. And then we were like, well, what do we do? It was kind of late at night, and we didn't want to go to a bar. I think she might have not even been 21 yet. So we were like, okay, well, we're gonna go get a bottle of wine, and we're gonna go to the graveyard. So we got a bottle of white fish eye with a screw top, and we went to the graveyard. We were hanging out, and we were like, I don't think we're supposed to be here. I think that's it closes, right? Graveyards have hours. So we were like, well, what if someone catches us? And we were like, well, we can just say we were visiting our grandmother, and we both realized that we have some Jewish roots. We were like, well, we're visiting our awesome Jewish grandmother. This is her birthday. And she's a Holocaust survivor, and we
beautiful mother, Lucia. And Elizabeth, to me, was the encapsulation of my daughter also. Whenever I go and Elizabeth would be at Lucia's house, there's this beauty and this grace that she filled the whole world with, let alone the room. And when I found out her diagnosis, my heart went to Lucia. As a mother, to know or feel the things you feel when your daughter or your child is in any kind of distress. And what Elizabeth gave to me and this experience gave to me was gratefulness. This year, I went on another trip, my girl trip with my daughter, who's about the same age as Elizabeth. And the whole time I was there, my mind was on Elizabeth and my daughter. And to be able to appreciate every moment, every picture, every grumpy little face she would make, I got to experience. And I experienced that through the awareness of Elizabeth. And knowing how precious this was to me, and how precious Elizabeth is to Lucia. And so, Elizabeth, I never got to say this in life, but I'm saying it now. Thank you. Thank you for that great reminder of gratefulness and preciousness and beauty and grace. I hear it in all of you today, and I know I'm just going to carry it in each and every moment. And I love you, Lucia.
I'll give this a try. I want to honor Elizabeth's mother and family. I probably know less than anybody in here about Elizabeth. I get that feeling. And I'm so grateful to all of you for sharing what you have about her life with us now. I know, I'm just... It was about 2007, so I realized she was 17. It was the first time that I started getting together with Lucia and Zelie, and Elizabeth was coming and going. One night we were on the patio, and she walked out in a black and white, a flowery, kind of patterned dress, absolutely stunning looking. And I didn't realize until today what I was actually seeing. The next moment that I remember was in the kitchen, and I saw something with a girl was coming. I knew something was coming. And I didn't figure it out, just didn't figure it out. So I realized it was probably the beginning of this. She was at that point before anybody knew. But I felt it. So, thank you.
There's so many wonderful stories of Elizabeth and so many touching moments. And while we are celebrating Elizabeth, I know that Elizabeth would also want us to honor her mother, for bringing her to us. Thank you. Her father, thank you, Greg, for bringing her to us. For so generously sharing her. For so generously sharing this past time. As I said when I was here in July, Lucia, you move me deeply because of who you are. And I know Elizabeth in her own way will live through all of this. And I know she would want you honored. Thank you.
So, we'll be moving in a little bit. Before we do, you know, in all the stories and in all the myths, there are gods and goddesses and monsters. But there's nothing scarier than the god or goddess, the fairy who was overlooked, who wasn't invited, who shows up and says, wait a minute, I didn't get an invitation. Wow. And so, as we honor Elizabeth, and we honor her life, and we honor all the amazing gifts, from the sacred to the glorious profane that she carried, we also, at all places of a memorial service, need to take just a little time to honor death, to give death space. And so, it's a double barrel at this time. I'm going to ask Kathleen to play some harp, and during this time I offer you the opportunity to contemplate and reflect on death's presence in your life, how it has shown up for you with Elizabeth's death, perhaps contemplating your own or others you have loved. And yes, with each death there's also the herald of a new beginning, but lest we move too hastily to new beginnings, let us also feel the endings and the weight of immeasurable loss that we carry with us, because it is only through going deeply down all the way through to the bottom of grief and loss that we find somehow that place to press against, to rise again from. Please stand now as Elizabeth's uncle David Helms reads Kaddish, the Jewish prayer for the dead.
ויזכדה שמי רבה. על מה דיברה חיבוסי ויניח מעשה, לחייכום, ימיכום, ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, והגלה בזמן קריב במרו אמן. תהא שמה רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה. יסברך, ויסתבח, ויספאר, ויסרומם, ויסנשא, ויסחדר, ויסעלה, ויסעלל שמי לקדושו ברוך הוא. לעילה מן כל בחרסה, ושרסה, תשוש בחסה, ונחמסה, תאמרן ועלמה ואמרו אמן. תהא שלמה רבה מן שמיה, תחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן.
Talk about a woman with range, huh? So we're going to move into the final ritual of our ceremony together and our sharing. And to do so, I'm going to ask to do something quite extraordinary for a group of people, which is going to ask you to move the chairs back so that we can form one large circle. These egg shakers each have Elizabeth's name and an image of her fingerprint on them, and they are a gift to each of you who are here today. Wonderful. And I should get this so I don't forget. This is a very short ritual, and this is the map of what it will be. Some of you have spoken about the deep in many ways that you've known Elizabeth, and some of you have spoken about barely glimpsing her at all. And each of these together put together this stupendous image of Elizabeth. And so we're going to begin by just taking a moment to focus on your Elizabeth, whoever that might be for you. Thank you. And as you focus on your Elizabeth, whatever that might be, a moment, a worm, a Tucson, my one true love, a wave. Whatever that is for whoever your Elizabeth is, breathe her. I'm asked to put her right, just as if you can imagine or feel her right in the center there, in that energy there. And together, that's nice. And together we will create ours. Yes, you will just shake it up a little. Right? And just focus on that basket there. Together we'll hold the energy there. And once we've begun that, I will read a poem of Elizabeth's. And then once the poem is finished, we're going to begin to shake our shakers. And the reason we shake our shakers is to begin to release the energy. To release with gratitude what we have been so richly gifted with. And so to begin, just holding, going inside for a moment, and just seeing whichever Elizabeth, your Elizabeth, shows up. And then whatever that is that shows up for you, feeling, a sense, an image, just breathing that now towards the altar in the center. Seeping back. I adore you. One moment of holding this God in all parts of my body. Devotion, my mysterious master. Don't adore me in cupped hands, not holding, seeping back to the river of eternal life. Devotion, my mysterious master. I saw the crossroads, one forever movement of light seeping back to the river of eternal life, coming through the body back to the heart of center, back to the sexuality of breath. I saw the crossroads, one forever movement of light. I felt the gift, one moment of holding forever, I adore you. Coming through the body, back to the heart center, back to the sexuality of breath. This place of unknowing, eternal, unjudged, finally let be, don't adore me. I felt the gift, one moment of holding forever, I adore you. I am waiting for our hearts to be conjoined in the endless breath. This place of unknowing, eternal, unjudged, finally let be, don't adore me. Whisper of eternity that says, I love you. I am waiting for our hearts to be conjoined in the endless breath. Why can we not meet at the simple movement, place of undying peace and satisfaction? Whisper of eternity that says, I love you. For if we were to meet in that place, there would be nothing left to live for. Why can we not meet at the simple movement, place of undying peace and satisfaction? I adore you. For if we were to meet in that place, there would be nothing left to live for, seeping back to the river of eternal life. Truly we have been blessed, for we have loved and known ourselves beloved. For into our lives came a woman called Elizabeth. And as we complete now, I have a couple of short announcements, and then Elizabeth's father, Greg, is going to read one final blessing from Elizabeth to all of us. Immediately afterward, there will be some food out here. Please join us. Please devour. There will be some music that will come on immediately after the finishing of this poem, and I want you all to know that that song and many of the songs on the playlist to follow are all Elizabeth's favorites, although I'm sure they're not limited to that list. And yes. And just remember, as grief moves through us throughout these coming days and months, just as joy does, grief can be a bit like gravity. It seems subtle, but it's everywhere, and every once in a while it'll drive you to your knees. Let the earth be your best friend when grief comes. Breathe into her and keep great. We need that. And this is Greg Mata, Elizabeth's father. Greg, would you do this too?
My wish for you. May revelation flourish in your mind. May joy spread through your every being. May life occur in your soul. May you know who you are. May you love yourself and others in the world. May you cherish your mother. May you love your father. May you cry. May you be angry. May you laugh with your soul singing along. May you dance and be beautiful. May you be adored and loved. May you be full of yourself and who you are. May you live life. May you be life. And someday, you may lay down and die. August 2004. May the poise and grace with which she left us be a model for life.
That's not for
dramatic.
I know.
Turn it on.
Hello, everyone. We're going to begin in a moment, but I'd just like to remind everyone to please silence their cell phones. That's all.